Hello, everyone. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Rhiannon Branch, and we're excited to begin another Harvest Hangout conversation. This is a content partnership with Pioneer. Today, we're talking about Pioneer's leadership in testing and the benefit that has for growers. But first, let's welcome back our agronomists, Nate and Pat. Guys, go ahead and remind us where you're located and what you do for Pioneer.
I'm Nate LeVan. I'm from North Central Iowa. I am a field agronomist based out of the Mason City area. So do have kind of a 5 or 6 county area that covers a big chunk of North Central down to about Highway 3. So I'm not quite the top third of the state, but I would say this week we're going to get a whole lot of corn harvest wrapped up, a lot of the plots coming out, a lot of data to process. So that's kind of the fun part for the agronomy team to look at some of those things. So glad to be here.
And I'm Pat Reeg, Pioneer Field Agronomist in East Central Illinois. I live in Bloomington, which is in McLean County, and basically covered from Bloomington over to the Indiana border and into Indiana a little bit as well. Kind of centered on Champaign, follow the I-74 corridor, and really excited to talk about some of the plots that we have this year in the Pioneer world.
Well, let's hop to it then. As you guys already know, Pioneer manages one of the largest local and on-farm testing programs that the industry has. Can you paint us a picture kind of the scale of this testing?
We've got testing all over the North America, and looking at corn and soybeans in particular, crops that Nate and I both are involved in. There's 3 major ways that we really do a lot of our testing. First starts with our impact testing program. Impact is still during the research stages before we put products in a bag. It does include our commercial products that we do have available for sale today, but it has that pipeline of products that are coming through, and it allows us to compare our latest and greatest products versus the products that we're already selling. And on top of that, we also put in competitive products in those plots. So we have those 3 different avenues to look at. It's a 2-year testing program. That changed just a couple of years ago. The reason we do 2 years is we want to see these newer products over multiple environments, over multiple years. So we just don't rush products through and throw them out on fields. And by doing that, that's really allowed us to basically kill some hybrids that could be a real failure when they make it to the farm. So corn breeding is obviously about bringing new products to market. But one of the most important, probably key things involved in that is killing products that will fall on their face, that will get in that environment where they don't succeed. And so that's what our impact really helps us. It sorts through and tells us what products we need to advance and what products will be replaced in the products we currently sell. After we get through impact, we put out what's called product knowledge plots in my area. And these product knowledge plots, or PKPs is how we abbreviate them, those really focus on our leader products that we're focused on in this area. And we do have some competitors in there as well at some of the locations, and they're great plots for understanding the characteristic differences between our hybrids, looking at plant height, ear height, roots, stalks, disease, and how they handle different diseases. That's what we use those product knowledge plots for. And then the third method that we really focus in on, and one of my favorites, is doing side-by-sides. That could be split planters, that could be blocks. These are field-proven plots that really allow us to look not just in good, well-drained soils where a lot of the plots are placed, but in the tough soils, in wet spots in the field, basically all those different scenarios that different hybrids get to go through. I think that's where these side-by-sides really allow us to see what products shine and see how we stack up against the competition.
Nate, anything you want to add on the scale of the testing or the kind of how the testing process works?
Yeah, that's a great lead in. We do a lot of the same impacts and the same PKF or PKPs, but we also do one PKF. So we call them product knowledge foundation trials. So similar to what you would get with the impact trials, we're trying to tell genetic differences, hybrid A versus hybrid B, but at the same time, we all know that the equation for yield is not only the genetic part, the hybrid. Once the breeders give us a really good solid hybrid that they think is going to perform well here, and our impact agronomists say, all right, we're going to glean off the 10% that we're going to leave for you. Then they give them to me and they say, all right, Nate, go break them. go see where they fail, go see where they succeed, go see where these happen to be ears from PKF foundational. We usually try to get, okay, do we need 30,000 of ears like this to maximizing yield, or do we need 34,000 of these to maximize yield? A lot of times those PKFs or foundation trials, I would say I have about maybe 15 to 16 in a given year, trying to get like 2 to 3 per county. A lot of times they're not just your best perfect soil types, to kind of build on what Pat was saying. We go across the soils that you grow on, not just the best, 90 CSR or the most highly productive stuff. And those are usually my plots that I really enjoy the most, not only because we get to kind of coordinate them, but then you get a lot of combine time with our growers as they're combining them. We get to see, firsthand what it looks like across half-mile stretches, 8 rows long, so you really get a feel of those hybrids right after they come off of impacts for what they do agronomically. So that's, as local as it gets and as replicated as it gets. Usually by the time they get to like your seed guide, they've probably been tested on at least a couple hundred acres locally. Within a couple county areas. So we take a lot of pride in that. It's a lot of work, but the reps are usually pretty happy with. I think Pat commented on it. We cut the ones that are going to cause them problems, hopefully before they even get them.
I want to touch on each of these trials a little bit, and I want to definitely start with what a customer agronomy trial is and kind of how that works. Pat, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, these PKF plots that Nate was just talking about is one such type trial where we're looking at populations in that scenario. We do a lot of other agronomy type trials out in the field, maybe looking at sulfur. Sulfur has become a hot topic in the last few years, and it's something that we used to get through acid rain, but as we've cleaned up our coal plants and our electric plants, we're not getting as much sulfur back through acid rain, and we're probably starting to mine some of our sulfur out of the organic matter in the soils. And so that's one great thing that we can study, and it's been a hot topic. Other topics include fungicides and insecticides and all these different seed treatments that are coming out in the market. There's just a ton of stuff that can be tested on the farm, and what a great way to do it in the real world. I've been a big fan of that for years.
Well, let's dive into some examples then. Nate, can you give maybe a scenario of a customer trial that you oversaw this year and maybe how it went and some of the results?
Yeah, like I said, we usually do a lot of these on the corn side, but the last couple times we've been actually doing them on soybeans as well. And I think one of my favorite ones this year that I ended up getting a hold of is kind of that outside, what can we do better as far as some of these biologicals. One that I'm really looking forward to is our Utrisha N. So Utrisha is a biological that generates some additional in-plant nitrogen for both corn and soybeans. And this last year, we got an opportunity to try some of these enhanced treatments, across the board on both corn and beans. And we always think about nitrogen on soy or on corn, right? We never really think about that soybean plant needing a whole lot because it produces its own, or it has nodules to help get some out of the atmosphere. And that's true. But I know we were talking like yield levels that were just unthinkable in some of our last episodes here. When you tend to get to that like 75 to 80 bushel, realm, or you're trying to grow soybeans on some lower organic matter soils where you don't get a lot of that free mineralization for nitrogen, there hits a point where that plant's going to need some in order to fill pods, keep pods, fill those beans. And Utrisha is one of those very simple, throw it in with like an R2 to R3 application, a timing application like you would with a fungicide or maybe a foliar application. And, initially we've seen some pretty solid results. Some of them, just like anything else, we kind of figure out, it didn't really give us much here, or it was pretty much a push. But I think that was the one that, at least grower interaction this fall into this late summer when we're making those applications, they want to know about that because nitrogen is an expensive input. And whether we're enhancing soybean production or using this on corn, I think that's the one where I'm kind of excited about. It's something new, it's something different, it's something that I think, as we evolve from just using nitrogen from the old Haber-Bosch process, the typical anhydrous or, what we've been using, that's going to be a game changer in some cases. So hopefully we're going to get some products here. Nutrition is one of them that we're trying out this year. So that's the one I'm kind of excited about from this year.
Some of the Pioneer reps I work with been doing some fun things with soybeans as well. Probably the biggest one and real basic one is just still looking at planting dates. As we look at soybean planting dates in my geography, it seems like the earlier we plant, the higher the yields, and that held true again this year. So if you want to raise higher soybean yields, it seems like the farther we can push that planting date up, preferably in April, that's the time frame to do it in. And it takes some good seed treatments to make that happen. And even if we lose a little stand, it seems like those beans are still always the best at the end of the season.
Pat, do you have an example of a customer trial there in Illinois that you oversaw this year that you want to share?
Well, I have one that's kind of exciting from this week, not so much an agronomy trial, but one of our newest hybrids, our newest genetics. It's 1742 Chrome. It's a 117-day triple stack. And the field just got harvested. We had a side-by-side with a competitive 117-day hybrid. Our new 117-day 1742 went 326 bushel on this field. The competitor was 299. It was replicated multiple times, and both were pretty consistent there in those replications. So it's exciting to see the kind of yields that we can raise in this geography. This was a well-drained field, extremely high fertility, good management. They've got fungicide and insecticide and plenty of nitrogen going on it. And when you really manage the acre and you've got a good genetic hybrid there in the background, we can raise some phenomenal yields. And this is on non-irrigated. This is dry land ground. So some pretty impressive yields here, considering what little bit of rain we had this season in my area. So excited about that.
Definitely. Well, you guys have touched a lot on these side-by-side comparison trials. How can a grower get involved in these for 2023?
We do so many different things. We use like insecticides, whether they're our own or those throughout the industry. We do side by sides with these biologicals. A lot of times it's grower driven because I'm going to use another example. 2-pass fungicide on tar spot. This has becoming a bigger concern with tar spot resistance or genetic tolerance variation. And I've got growers coming to me asking for that, and it's like, let's see if we can get 5, 6, 10, maybe 15 different guys that with a little bit of coaching, a little bit of let's just say setting the navigational beacons. I mean, I know Pat, with your background, with your research background, it was always, all right, let's get a protocol right. And then everybody can follow it. Everybody has the same game plan. And it makes a really powerful local data set that's not just one location, one side by side. It gets to be the power of the multiplication factor. And then at the end of the year, those same growers are asking about like, hey, what are we going to do next year? Or, how do we get the next 5 bushels? So I think some of the best ideas are when they come to us and like, all right, let's sit down, peer behind the curtain a little bit and see what's going on your farm. That's the fun part for me is this off season part when they want to try new things, and some things we've heard about, some things brand new. So it gets to be a whole lot of fun here in the next few months.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there, Nate. The farmers are coming up with a lot of great ideas of new things to test out. The companies are bringing different products for them to test as well, and that's where some of the ideas are generated from. We've got a whole army of Pioneer reps that work with customers all over North America that help them in this whole process of doing these side-by-sides and split planter type work and different agronomic trials. And that's what really makes this all come together, especially when you get a network of people working together and all focused on the same topic. Because then you got some, not just replication in the field, but replication across lots of fields. And you can get a lot better idea of how many times out of 10 or 20 or 30 that a certain practice or a certain product gives you return on that investment. So I think that's really important. It's also really important. And one thing that I try to do when I'm working with customers is to make sure they understand the yield monitor and how that plays into this. If you're not weighing it and you're using the yield monitor, making sure we get good data out of that monitor, having the monitor calibrated, not having 2 combines in that trial area where one's harvesting the check and the other one's harvesting the treatment, and you get just a whole bunch of noise. And so just some simple things like that, making sure you harvest that whole plot on the same day. You don't want to harvest part of the plot and then stop because it's getting too late in the day and the moisture's starting to come up, for example, on the beans, and then come back the next day. You'll have differences in yield because of all those things. There's just a lot of little tricks there that making sure you got good data to really summarize that trial at the end of the day.
So I want to focus on maybe a new customer or a repeat customer who hasn't been involved in some of these tests and trials. Let's really touch on what the benefits of these are to the growers, maybe the return on investment, what they can expect to get out of this type of experience.
Well, most growers always want to raise the bar. They want to get the most out of every acre that I work with. And so I think just continuously doing on-farm trials, doing whether it's genetics or management or products, and looking at these things every year, I think is really critical to raising that bar. Sometimes people want to throw all kinds of different treatments out in the field, and they don't know which treatment is giving them the real benefit, right? If you're out there in the field and you've got a fungicide and an insecticide and a foliar treatment, maybe you put a starter down, and you're doing all these things, and at the end of the day, you don't know which one of those different treatments gave you the most return on investment, or if it even gave you return on investment at all. So it's really important sometimes to split some of those things out. Don't throw the kitchen sink at it. Let's figure out which individual practice, product, management is giving us the biggest return on that investment.
Nate, anything to add there on the benefits of, Pioneer testing or these customer trials?
Well, I guess one of the biggest things that I hope that they get from us is not only the product knowledge, and Pat really hit on, some of the details around raising a better crop, regardless of the situation, corn, soybeans. But usually I feel like half of the benefit they get is the additional trusted advisor. Is once they get to understand, hey, now you got not only your seed rep, your agency, but you got a territory manager that maybe just lives 3 miles away that looks at your farm all the time and is always like, yeah, I wonder what they're doing. They seem to be doing things pretty well. And then usually get my number or Pat's number. If we are making our rounds and all of a sudden we're like, we're going to check out tar spot on that one. Hopefully it's just another layer of, I guess, of advice of just, that other person keeping another set of eyes on their fields. Like I said, my favorite part of the day is getting to try to understand the growers' operations. And, everybody, there's 100 different ways to be successful, and everybody does it a little bit different. And, if we look at something that, you've been trying doing it this way, we probably got 5-6 other guys doing exactly what you're doing. I got a cover crop guy in the back. And behind me, I've probably got 10 different guys that use cover crops, no-till, strip-till, that I can go to within that little network and, bounce ideas off or give advice to. So it is the products, and the products are the foundation, and they've got to do their part. And we've got to do our part. But I think the networking part is so much of what that local trial basis is an advantage there. And again, that's the fun part for us, because, as we get to learn new things, it makes us better agronomists, or at least makes me a better agronomist when I get to look at a different experience, done things a little different way.
I learn new things every year, every season from different growers that I work with. And whether you're a new customer working with Pioneer or someone who's been working with Pioneer for years, there's some real benefits that field agronomists like Nate and myself and our Pioneer rep team bring to the table, whether it's flying drones over top the fields to gather some of those differences that we're seeing in the variability out in the field. And we also have Granular Insights. Granular is our digital tool that we have that we can get imagery, satellite imagery on the fields, and we can monitor every couple of days and see through the season if there's a visual difference before we even get to harvest. So we can start to see ahead of time whether or not these treatments out there in the field are having any impact. And we've got the capability to bring all this digital data in and process it and summarize it. So that's a lot of fun. Our growers that participate in that, they've got it on their own computers, their own mobile devices as well. And we've got some really neat weather monitoring tools that summarize the weather for the season in there and help us, sort out the correlations that we might have, or maybe there's no correlations, and that can pop out sometimes too.
Guys, this has been a great conversation on Pioneer testing. Obviously, you guys are the experts. Do you have anything more you want to add on this topic at all?
I would say in general, if you have a question about it, one of your neighbors probably does too. And more than likely, there might be 3 or 4 other folks that probably want to learn the same thing you do. We're going to really deep dive into more on soybean populations this year. We're going to really deep dive on that 2-pass fungicide again this year. These are things that it seems like after a while you got university data, but as the genetics evolve and the genetics change, I mean, we've seen over the course of history that the reason why we can drive yields higher in corn is because, we can get an ear that 20 years ago, maybe at, 26,000 population looked like this. Well, now we can drive it to 38. So they might be older questions, but they're questions that need to be evaluated every so often to make sure you get the most out of your product. So if you happen to see maybe a Pioneer meeting or something locally and you're not quite sure that you want to attend, I almost guarantee that there's going to be somebody there that has the same sort of, I guess, aspect or outlook on what they're doing, same sort of questions, and I would guarantee almost every one of your agronomists or territory managers putting that on. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask. Usually we're a pretty friendly group for the most part, Pat. I usually takes a pretty rough crowd to really get us too riled up. So we'd welcome anybody that wants to come to attend our post-harvest meetings.
All right. Well, that wraps up today's Harvest Hangout with Pioneer. We hope to see you all next week when we're going to discuss some corn harvest results as well as the Pioneer pipeline of innovations for corn. You can plan to view that conversation at brownfieldagnews.com.